Shalom Aleichem. This segment is brought to you by Rabbi Yehuda Shane, administrator of Kashrus Anytime, which is a division of the Kosher Consumers Union, a 501c3 organization. We'll address now some things basically which is more negeya for a mashgiach in a hotel, but basically everybody should be familiar with it so they could talk to the mashgiach, see his familiarity with it, see if they could rely on what he's doing, etc. It's not going to encompass everything that a mashgiach base should be aware of, but we'll bring a number of things to the attention. And basically, if people should be aware of these things, I hope you have certain things to jot down some information. First and foremost is a mashgiach should be very familiar and be able to understand and communicate with the personnel in a common language that's used in a commissary, in a kitchen, etc., etc. Knowing some Spanish is an advantage, but you don't have to know Spanish, but it is an advantage. Therefore, it's important to be familiar with kitchen equipment, the name, the description, and if it's fleischiks, milchiks, or parov, and exactly how it's designated. The fact that this style is fleischiks and this style is milchiks and this one is parov is really unacceptable. It must be with a color on it. The usual color is fleischiks is red, milchiks is blue, parov is either green or black or something like that, but basically it should be very clearly designated. Others will allow to use for fish to use fleishik kalim as long as it's clean. Others will not allow it, so just know what the Rav Machshir really wants. They should always use a strictly parov knife to cut onions, because onions, you can't use the same knife that you cut meat to cut onions, and then you're going to use it for fleishiks, and vice versa. You can't use it for fish, and then you can't use it for milchiks. So that's why onions pays to have a special knife where somebody cuts all the onions, and you know the onions, you don't have to be concerned if it's going to go for fleishiks, for milchiks, or parov. You have one special set of knives that does only that. The mashgiach should also be familiar with all types of ovens, convection ovens. You should know if the convection oven is electronic ignition or it has a standing pilot, and how you light a pilot should be familiar. And be familiar with deep fryers, also how to light the pilot, etc., etc. Be familiar with fryer-laters, steamers. Then the steamer, you want to know if it gets the steam from the general boiler or it has its own steam generator, because it makes a very big difference. You have to be familiar with grills and how you kasher those things, and be familiar with griddles, steam kettles, 4-burner oven, a 6-burner stovetop, and a broiler and a brazier. Know what a brazier is. Be familiar. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Know what a warm box is, what a speed rack is, refrigerators, freezers, reach-in box, sheet pans, GI pot, the heavy one, the lightweight one, roasting pans, a Chinese cap, colanders, buffalo chopper, blenders, beaters, mixing bowls, ladles, spatulas, slotted spoons, strainers, slicers, mittens, gloves, and you have to be familiar how they use these things also, because a lot of these things you should really put away for Shabbos. Anything that's a strainer, slotted spoons, Chinese caps, those type of things should be put away for Shabbos. A skimmer, a tureen, know what those things are. You have to be very familiar with Bishul Akum. Convection ovens, the ones that don't have a standing pilot, the ones that have electronic ignition, when they come from the company, the design, basically when you open up the door, the fire goes off and the fan usually goes off, and when the non-Jew closes it, he's the one that put on the fire. So basically you have a problem with Bishul Akum, which asks the food, asks the pan, asks the oven, asks everything. So you have to know how to handle that, if you have to do a bypass, whatever, but know how it works over there. Know how to light the pilots, and make sure that you lit the pilots, and not that the guy lights the pilots. Make sure that they don't have any igniters laying around the kitchen, that if a pilot went off by a stove, that they can't light it up. It's only the mashgichim should have it. Know how steam kettles work. You have to know that even if you turned on the boiler, doesn't mean that because of that your Bishul Akum is solved. Besides, I'm not talking about by Sfardim, but because they blow down the commercial boiler at least once a day, so the guy basically put back on the boiler, even though you did it once when you came there, So you really have to make sure that you turn on always whenever they need a steam kettle, you turn it on. You have to know by tilt kettles. It has a micro switch that basically will shut it off when they tilt it. Then when he puts it back on, basically he could have shut off the thing and turned it back on. You don't even realize about it. Then you have to know by a boiler. If the boiler basically did cooking with non-kosher, it's still doing cooking non-kosher. What kind of pogum? How do you deal with pogum? Make sure that all utensils are marked for dairy, meat, fish, and parve. Know where the spray paint is kept. Check that you have enough. Take it to outside job. Take nail polish in the colors for dairy, meat, and parve because usually you'll find that something is not marked. And once you have somebody reliable that could identify what it is, you mark it that way, and that's the way it's going to remain. Be familiar with what is in the storeroom, what's in the refrigerators, and what's in the freezers. Be familiar with the type of products used, including for each product, what it is, the brand, the distributor, the hashgacha, the size, and the location. Because sometimes they got in something which the distributor very often will substitute something else. So don't assume that because it's a kosher caterer and everything else like it that they took care of it. You have to be familiar with every one of these what it is. Check the kashrus and yoshan in season. You have to know what items are yoshan. You have to know what ingredients are in there that may be a problem of yoshan. And a lot of people are makbar on yoshan, which they should be. The status of every item when received at the commissary of what it is. Check mevushal and the hashgacha status of all wines, liquors, and liqueurs. Be familiar with all the dairy items and brands, the milk, the cheese, the cream, the yogurts, butter, hard cheeses, including which cheese is required to wait 6 hours prior to consuming the meat. If you have Friday afternoon, they're going to serve for lunch, they're going to serve eggplant parmesan with a 6-hour cheese, and now you don't have 6 hours till the meal, you got a problem. You have to tell them they have to change it. So it's very important to be familiar with the menus in advance to know exactly what's going in and what they're going to have over there. Be familiar with the sources of beef, lamb, veal, poultry, turkey, duck, fish, gefilte fish, candies, confectionery items. Be familiar with the menus and ingredients used in the various dishes. If when you read a menu and you don't understand what this item is and how it's made or what it consists of, don't be afraid to ask. Yeah, you'll ask a number of questions. It'll sound stupid in the beginning, but you're not going to learn by not asking, and then you're going to make a lot of mistakes by not being familiar with this. That you don't be afraid to ask, you don't know, and then you take some notes and you jot it down. Be very familiar with what exactly is coming on the truck from the commissary. That you don't have that as that loading everything up and then somebody went and put some other things on the dock that didn't come from the commissary, and the mashgiach from the commissary thinks that everything that he sent to the job is acceptable, and so you have to know from the mashgiach over there what he sent out, how the things are marked, if things are sealed. You open up the lock or whatever else it is, you see what's in there, get a good grasp of what there is, and make sure nothing else gets slipped in while they make sure the mashgiach didn't look. It does happen a little bit too often. Be familiar with all items and sources of whatever will be delivered directly to the fair. You have the big problems are usually the party planners. They'll bring in everything, and this is good. I know this one used it, and Ali used it, and this one used it, and that one used it. It makes no difference. The Rav Machshir makes a decision. If you don't have that kind of thing, you don't accept it. You also have to make sure that the things that came in that need Tvilas Kalim, that it has Tvilas Kalim. Every item is to be checked for its acceptable sources and proper seals. Sometimes the party planner will bring in certain plates they want to use, whatever else it is. If it's not kosher or wasn't toivel, whatever else it is, you got to deal with those things in advance or call the Rav Machshir, let him decide. Prior to mealtime, Mashgiach must familiarize himself with the menu. Check the utensils and the flatware, dishes, products, etc. If fish and meat will be served, double forks and knives may be required. Make sure that they have them on the table, and make sure that when the waiters or bus people take off from the table, before you're putting down the next course, the meat or the flesh, whatever else it is, that they've cleaned off everything that was there from the fish. Mashgiach shouldn't leave his post till his replacement arrives and has been updated as to where everything is up to. It may be a little bit longer than you can't just look at your watch and leave. That's not being a responsible mashgiach, and you should always come a few minutes early to your shift so you could find out from the previous mashgiach of where everything is standing. A mashgiach should arrive 20 minutes prior to his shift to get updated on the status from the mashgiach on duty. A mashgiach should know why he makes the specific, well-thought-out decision. Be firm, but not argumentative. Get in touch with the Rav Machshe in case of issues that may arise. Davening with a minyan is part of the job unless the specific situation does not permit it. A mashgiach must respect all and act in a way that is respected and makes a kiddush Hashem even by eating. Not to become friendly with the kitchen or hotel staff is very important. Mashgiach is not to become friendly with them. No mingling or chatting with the opposite gender, guests or otherwise. Going to sleep on time is a criterion for proper hashgacha. Products. Check for proper seals of fish, meat, poultry when product arrives at the commissary. Check all produce and be very vigilant that it isn't from Israeli origin, like a Grexco or Carmel, etc. If it is, make sure you take it off and not just to leave it and you'll make sure they don't use it. Just don't let it come into the facility. We don't accept everything from any specific hashgacha per se. We don't accept everything from any specific supplier, and everything gets approved on an item-by-item basis. Eggs are opened and checked by mashgiachim. They must be able to separate eggs, whites from yellows. Many of the eggs in the New York metropolitan area come from Amish country, where over there they do have males in the flocks. So it's not so any blood spot over there would be a deraisa, not a drabanan. So people are not aware of that. Mashgiach must get trained hands-on for bedikas teilam, unless the system over there is that there is absolutely no bedikas teilam done on site. Everything is done before. It's brought in pre-checked from companies like Positive or Kosher Garden, or from Ari Green from Evergreen. Those are the things that are acceptable. Different methods are required for items that require bedika. Pearl barley requires bedika. That's up to the mashgiach. You put it into hot water, sink tap hot water for a few minutes and stir it around. Take a look. Learn how to check celery for leaf miners, etc. Rosemary, mint, lemon leaf, blueberries. There's no way of eating blueberries. Strawberries must get peeled. Edible flowers. Most mashgiachim don't know how to check it, so do not allow it. Most edible flowers do have live insects walking around in the flower. If you could do, you should learn how to do Bishul Yisrael Beis Yosef if you can, because they do have Svardim. You have others that are noig like the gun, that all Bishul Yisrael has to be done Beis Yosef. Learn how to operate to do a grill and a griddle, etc., etc. When a crepe station is being used, the mashgiach should light the fire and be available in crepe stations, as the waiters may not adjust the flames, and sometimes, very often, by these crepe stations, it does go off, and you have to watch because they will try to relight it because they don't need a lighter for it. They just turn the thing and the thing clicks and goes on. Salads are either dairy or fleshig. When coming back from a meal, it must be put in its proper place, either dairy or meat. There is no such a thing as salads or parve unless you really have a parve kitchen where it goes, but once it went onto the table, you can't take it back into the parve kitchen. Fish pots, knives, grill, and utensils must be designated fish or very clean. No fish or meat poultry in oven at the same time, even covered. You must have separate spices for fish. The reason for that is because many in a kitchen will put in their spoon to take out from the thing, and they use a kitchen spoon which does have in it residue of some other kind of foods on the inflation, whatever else it is. So you have to have separate spice for fish. Usually you keep that in smaller containers in a separate bus box. Side dishes that may be used for fish and meat should be made separately in an oven or all parov. All onions should be peeled, as we said, with a parov special designated knife. All fires are to be lit by the mashgiach only. All pilots should be lit by mashgiach weekly, including oven, grill, fryer later, convection of a steam kettle, because sometimes by mistake it could be that somebody went and lit it and you didn't know about it. So you have it as a standard precaution is that at least once a week all fires are put out and relit again. Be familiar with various vegetables. No unpeeled onions, garlic, or eggs to be left overnight. If it happens to be the mashgiach that closes up for the night sees that they were not used up, he should put some salt, oil, or sugar and then mix them up in the batch thoroughly. Only mevushal wines are used in these places. A guest may not bring his own non-negotiable wine to any public area, including dining room, tea room, etc. And if somebody insists that he wants to have his non-negotiable wine, you tell him that OU policy is that we cannot let in any guest if he brings in his own non-negotiable wine. It cannot be done. And basically, even if you have to cancel a fare, whatever else it is, and you should be very firm about it because there's a lot of kukulim that happen. And people think, that's one of these things, a chumrah de asl de kula. Always check every container ice cream for its parve or dairy status. Don't assume that because he ordered it as parve that it's parve. Milk, cheese, dairy items should not be kept in the meat or parve refrigerator, preferably. Refrigerated and freezer items must be kept covered at all times because things can spill in from one to another when you will not realize it. All deliveries must be checked in the presence of a mashgiach. Waiters should not have free access to the kitchen, storage, free refrigerators, freezers, etc. Guests should also not have free access to any of the areas of the kitchen. They should wait by the kitchen door, and somebody, the mashgiach or somebody else, will get them what they need. And you cannot allow them to wash baby bottles in any of the sinks in the kitchen, etc., etc. We'll leave this at this point, and we'll continue with Shabbos and Yontif in a hotel or in a commissary, etc., etc., for another time. Thank you, and kol tov.